Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to day 2 of our webinar, Introduction to Sustainability. I remain Dr. Andrew. It's wonderful to see so many committed individuals joining us once again to deepen our understanding and explore the vital dimensions of sustainability. I would like to begin by honoring a distinguished leader whose passion for education and sustainable development has inspired many. Please join me in warmly welcoming Professor Adelik Daniel Durji, DC.Ed., PhD, THD, founder and CEO of Saraduro Educational Multilinks. Professor Joji's work in educational innovation and sustainability advocacy continues to illuminate pathways for meaningful change, and we are truly privileged to have his presence and insights guide us throughout this webinar. I also want to intentionally recognize and extend a heartfelt welcome to Dr. Julius of the SEAL organization. Your dedication to sustainable initiatives and community empowerment plays a crucial role in translating knowledge into impactful action. We look forward to your valuable contributions during our discussions today. As we embark on the second day of this journey, let us carry forward the enthusiasm and curiosity from yesterday. Together, we will continue to unpack the interconnected pillars of sustainability, explore practical strategies, and inspire each other to become agents of positive change in our communities and beyond. Thank you all for your dedication to this important cause. Let's make today as enriching and engaging as the first. Before we dive into the agenda of today's webinar, I want to take a moment to highlight a powerful resource that will significantly enhance your understanding of the topics we'll be covering. The book is titled Introduction to Sustainability, spanning all forms of life. Asterisk, as the name suggests, this isn't just another textbook. It's a comprehensive guide that explores sustainability from a wide-angle lens. It delves into the environmental, social, economic, and even ethical dimensions of sustainability, connecting the dots between human activity, ecological balance, and long-term global well-being. Everything we'll be discussing today, whether it's climate resilience, sustainable development practices, biodiversity, or circular economies, is unpacked in great detail throughout this book. It's structured in a way that makes complex concepts accessible while still providing the depth needed for serious learning and application. Now, this book is currently priced at $75 on Amazon. But here's the great news: you don't have to spend a dime to start reading it. You can access it for free. Just head over to Amazon using the link we've provided, and you'll be able to begin reading immediately. Whether you're a student, a professional, or simply someone with a growing interest in sustainability, this book is an excellent companion to today's session and far beyond it. It's a resource you'll want to return to time and time again as you continue exploring and applying sustainable principles in your work and daily life. So before we get into the agenda, I highly encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity. Open the link, save it, bookmark it, whatever works best for you, and start immersing yourself in content that truly empowers informed action. Now, let's move forward with today's program. Slide 18. Introduction to Social Sustainability. Title: Sustainability for People and Communities. When we hear the word sustainability, most of us instinctively think of nature, forests, oceans, climate, and endangered species. And rightly so. But if sustainability is about securing the future, then we must also ask, a future for whom? A sustainable world is not just one where ecosystems thrive, it's one where people do too. That brings us to the second pillar of sustainability, social sustainability. Where environmental sustainability protects the physical systems of life, social sustainability protects the human systems, the relationships, institutions, and values that allow us to live with dignity, opportunity, and hope. It is about more than survival. It is about well-being, equity, and justice. It is about ensuring that no one is left behind. 1. Human well-being. More than just meeting basic needs, people holding hands. At its core, social sustainability begins with human well-being. That includes access to clean water, nutritious food, healthcare, education, housing, and safety. But it also extends to mental health, social inclusion, cultural identity, and the freedom to participate in society. A truly sustainable community is not just one that survives, it's one where people can thrive. This means children having safe places to learn and grow, workers having fair wages, job security, and safe conditions, families having access to healthcare and housing they can afford, elderly individuals living with dignity and support, people of all genders, races, and identities feeling seen, heard, and valued. Social sustainability understands that poverty, inequality, and marginalization aren't just economic problems. They're systemic issues that affect the long-term health of entire societies. You can't have a thriving environment without thriving people. And you can't have thriving people without addressing the social structures that impact their lives. 2. Equity and fairness, the foundation of justice balance scale. A sustainable future must be a fair future. Equity means recognizing that not everyone starts from the same place and taking intentional steps to correct systemic disadvantages. It's different from equality, which assumes everyone should be treated the same. Equity understands context. It seeks to ensure that everyone has what they need to succeed, not just the same treatment regardless of circumstance. Fairness is central to every aspect of sustainability. Environmental justice ensures that no community bears an unfair share of pollution, waste, or climate impacts. Economic justice ensures that prosperity is not concentrated in the hands of a few, while billions live without basic needs. Racial, gender, and disability justice ensure that people are not excluded from opportunity because of who they are. When we talk about inclusive development, we're talking about policies and systems that create access, that remove barriers, and that respect every person's right to participate in shaping their future. Social sustainability also calls out injustice. For example, indigenous communities are often displaced from ancestral lands in the name of development. Migrant workers may build cities they can't afford to live in, with no protection under the law. Women and girls may face violence or be denied education and economic independence. Addressing these issues is not just a moral imperative, it's essential for long-term resilience. Societies that fail to protect human rights and promote inclusion are more vulnerable to conflict, instability, and collapse. 3. Strong communities, the glue that holds it all together. Houses. Sustainability is built from the ground up, and that foundation is community. Strong communities are those where people trust each other, where they collaborate, where they care for one another. These are the places where resilience lives, not just in infrastructure, but in relationships. We've seen this time and again. After natural disasters, it's often communities, not governments, that mobilize first to provide shelter, food, and emotional support. During economic downturns, it's local networks, like cooperatives, mutual aid groups, and community centers, that help people stay afloat. And in times of crisis, it's community organizers, educators, and local leaders who keep the social fabric from unraveling. Social sustainability is about empowering communities to be agents of their own change, giving them the tools, knowledge, and authority to shape solutions that reflect their needs and values. It means investing in education and civic engagement, supporting local businesses and cooperatives, creating spaces for dialogue, culture, and inclusion, building affordable housing and accessible transportation, listening to and respecting indigenous knowledge and community wisdom. It also means planning for the long term, not just what's politically popular today, but what's going to strengthen the next generation. A bigger picture, social and environmental sustainability go hand in hand. It's important to remember that these pillars of sustainability don't exist in isolation. When people are excluded from education, they are less able to participate in green innovation. When communities are denied clean water, environmental progress is incomplete. When women are left out of climate policy, we lose critical leadership and insight. When the poor can't afford to transition to renewable energy, the energy transition fails. Social sustainability is not a soft side of the sustainability agenda. It is the human engine that drives all progress. And just like ecosystems, societies are most resilient when they are diverse, inclusive, and cohesive. So, as we move forward, let's be clear. Sustainability is not just about protecting trees. It's about protecting people. It's not just about lowering emissions. It's about raising opportunity. It's not just about what we preserve. It's about who we empower. We must design policies, systems, and communities that uphold human dignity, ensure equitable access, and foster collective strength. That is the essence of social sustainability. That is how we build a future worth living in, not just for some, but for everyone. Because if our efforts to save the planet do not also save each other, then we are not truly sustainable. Let's remember, the health of our planet and the well-being of its people are not separate goals. They are one and the same. Slide 19, Human Rights and Equity. Title: Fairness and Equality for All. At the heart of social sustainability lies a truth that is simple, powerful, and non-negotiable. Every human being has inherent dignity, value, and rights. No matter where they were born, what language they speak, what they believe, or how they identify, everyone deserves to live in safety, with freedom, opportunity, and respect. Slide 19 focuses on one of the most fundamental building blocks of a just and sustainable society: human rights and equity. These aren't optional add-ons to sustainability. They are the very foundation. We can plant 1 million trees, transition to clean energy, and create new technology. But if we are doing it in a way that leaves people behind, silences voices, or reinforces inequality, then we are not truly sustainable. We're simply masking injustice with progress. 1. Equal access to opportunities. Social sustainability begins with the belief that everyone deserves a fair shot at a good life, to go to school, get a job, be safe, speak freely, and shape their own future. But across the world, we see barriers that prevent equal access. Girls who are denied an education simply because of their gender. Indigenous communities excluded from decisions that affect their lands and resources. Migrants and refugees who are denied healthcare, shelter, or legal protection. People with disabilities shut out of employment, education, or civic participation. LGBTQ+ individuals facing discrimination in schools, workplaces, and public life. These inequalities are not just injustices, they are missed opportunities for entire societies. When people are blocked from participating fully in economic, political, and cultural life, we all lose. We lose talent, ideas, innovation, and human potential. Equal access means breaking down these barriers through inclusive education, accessible infrastructure, legal protections, economic empowerment, and fair representation. It means actively lifting up those who have been pushed down and creating systems that serve the many, not just the few. 2. Respect for human rights. Human rights are not just ideals written on paper. They are daily guarantees of dignity, the right to safety, to free expression, to education, to health, to privacy, to work, to rest, to a fair trial, to be free from discrimination. These rights apply to all people, in all places, at all times. Not based on citizenship, not based on wealth, not based on political power, but because someone is human. Yet even today, we witness violations of these rights. Journalists imprisoned for telling the truth. Protesters silenced or attacked for demanding change. Women denied autonomy over their bodies and choices. Children forced into labor or denied food and shelter. Communities displaced without consent for development projects. Respecting human rights is not just a moral duty, it is a strategic necessity. Countries and communities that uphold human rights are more stable, more peaceful, and more resilient in the face of crises. They attract more investment, foster more innovation, and build more trust among citizens. Social sustainability demands that we stand for these rights everywhere. That includes holding governments, corporations, and institutions accountable when rights are violated, and centering the voices of those most affected. 3. Inclusion and diversity, strength and difference. A truly sustainable society is one where difference is not feared, but embraced. Where people of all races, religions, cultures, genders, sexual orientations, and abilities are not just tolerated, but welcomed, included, and empowered. Diversity is not a weakness, it is a source of strength. Diverse teams make better decisions. Inclusive communities are more innovative and adaptable. Multicultural societies are richer in knowledge, language, and creativity. Inclusion is not just about inviting people to the table. It's about rebuilding the table, ensuring that power is shared, not hoarded. It's about listening, learning, and unlearning, especially for those of us in positions of privilege. True inclusion means creating workplaces where everyone feels safe and respected. Designing policies that reflect the needs of all, not just the majority. ensuring that people of color, women, youth, and marginalized groups have real decision-making power. Celebrating, not just tolerating, cultural heritage, traditions, and identities. It also means being willing to disrupt systems that were never designed to be inclusive in the first place. Because systemic injustice cannot be solved with surface-level solutions. Underscore. The bigger picture, justice as a pillar of sustainability. Let's be clear, there is no sustainability without justice. A world where clean air is only for the rich is not sustainable. A world where education, healthcare, and food are luxuries is not sustainable. A world where entire communities are invisible in policymaking is not sustainable. A world where voices are silenced, where fear replaces freedom, that is a world heading toward collapse, not resilience. Equity and human rights must guide every decision we make, from how we design cities to how we allocate resources, from how we build technology to how we respond to climate change. This is especially critical as we transition to more sustainable economies. Because the green transition must also be a just transition. That means retraining and supporting workers in fossil fuel industries. It means ensuring renewable energy projects benefit indigenous and rural communities, not displace them. It means giving small farmers, artisans, and marginalized groups access to climate finance and green innovation. We cannot repeat the mistakes of the past, where progress for some meant suffering for others. To build a truly sustainable world, we must commit to a deeper kind of fairness, not just in words, but in action. We must see sustainability not just as an environmental goal, but as a human imperative. It's about creating a world where everyone, everywhere, has the chance to live with dignity, agency, and hope. It is a world where children of every background can dream big and be safe doing so. No one is excluded because of where they were born, who they love, or what they believe. Power is shared. Resources are fairly distributed. Justice is not selective. And progress is measured not just by profits or GDP, but by the well-being of people. So as we work towards sustainability, let us remember, equity is not a goal at the end of the journey. It is the compass that must guide us from the very beginning. Because a sustainable society is not one where the future is reserved for a few. It's one where the future is shared by all. Slide 20. Education for Sustainability. Title: Education as a Driver of Change. Education is not just about textbooks, classrooms, and grades. At its core, education is empowerment. It's the process through which individuals gain the knowledge, critical thinking skills, and values necessary to understand their world and transform it for the better. When we speak about social sustainability, one factor consistently emerges as both a cause of inequality and a solution to it, and that is education. Slide 20 explores education not just as a human right, but as a driver of change, a foundation of justice, and a bridge to sustainability. If we want to solve our planet's environmental, social, and economic challenges, there is no tool more powerful, more essential, or more far-reaching than quality education. 1. Education equals empowerment books. Education equips people with more than just facts. It provides the skills to question, analyze, imagine, and act. It gives people the ability to understand the systems they live in and the power to change them. For individuals, education is often the difference between poverty and opportunity. For families, it's the key to better health, higher income, and social mobility. For communities, it builds resilience, cooperation, and innovation. For societies, it lays the foundation for equity, participation, and peace. But the truth is, access to education remains deeply unequal. Over 250 million children around the world are not in school. Girls, especially in low-income countries, face higher barriers to education due to cultural norms, safety concerns, and economic pressures. Marginalized groups, including indigenous people, refugees, and people with disabilities, are often left behind. If we are serious about sustainability, we must be serious about making education accessible, inclusive, and lifelong for all. Because an educated population is an empowered population, capable of solving problems, defending rights, protecting ecosystems, and driving innovation. 2. Education spreads awareness globe showing Europe, Africa. Sustainability cannot be achieved if people do not understand the challenges we face or recognize their role in addressing them. From climate change to plastic pollution, from biodiversity loss to social injustice. Education is how we turn abstract global issues into personal realities. It's how we help people see that every action counts, and that they have both a responsibility and a capacity to contribute. This is where Education for Sustainable Development, ESD, plays a critical role. ESD teaches people not just about the environment, but about the interconnectedness of systems, how economics, politics, culture, and science intersect. It encourages critical thinking over memorization, collaboration over competition, innovation over inertia, ethics and empathy over apathy. It helps students ask big questions like, how do my daily choices impact the planet? What can I do to reduce inequality in my community? How can we build a future that is fair, just, and sustainable for all? When people are educated not just in science or math, but in sustainability values, they become active citizens, not passive consumers. And it doesn't stop with children. Adult education, public awareness campaigns, media literacy, and community learning are just as vital. Because a sustainable future cannot be imposed from above, it must be understood and built by all of us, together. 3. Education builds future leaders. Every great shift in history has been led by people who were willing to challenge the status quo. And those people were almost always well-informed, well-educated, and values-driven. Education is how we raise the next generation of leaders, innovators, scientists, activists, teachers, and policymakers who will shape our world in the years to come. We need leaders who can think critically and act compassionately, can design renewable energy systems, and also understand the ethics of resource distribution, can write sustainable business models, and also advocate for workers' rights, can speak the language of both technology and humanity. Leadership in the sustainability era will look different. It will require a deep sense of responsibility, cross-disciplinary knowledge, and the courage to take action in the face of uncertainty. So how do we prepare future leaders? We invest in education that is forward-looking, inclusive of sustainability principles, and connected to real-world problems. We promote project-based learning that engages students in solving local challenges, service learning that connects classroom knowledge with community action, STEM and STEAM programs that build technical and creative skills, environmental literacy, climate education, and civic engagement from an early age. And we make sure that leadership opportunities are open to all students, not just the privileged few, because talent and passion are everywhere, but opportunity is not. The bigger picture, education as the seed of systemic change. If sustainability is about systems, how we produce, consume, govern, and live, then education is the tool we use to transform those systems from within. Through education, we challenge outdated thinking. Through education, we build empathy across cultures. Through education, we foster hope in the face of crisis. And through education, we give people the tools not just to adapt to change, but to lead it. This is why the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, include SDG 4, quality education, as both a standalone goal and a driver of every other goal, from gender equality to climate action. Because without education, progress is limited. With education, everything becomes possible. As we close this section, let's be absolutely clear. No sustainability strategy is complete without education at its core. We can't build a green economy, a just society, or a peaceful planet if people aren't equipped with the knowledge, values, and skills to sustain them. Education is the quiet engine behind every sustainable innovation, every social breakthrough, every movement for justice. It's how we plant the seeds of change in minds, in communities, and across generations. So let's invest in education that is inclusive, transformative, and grounded in sustainability. Let's support educators, empower students, and connect learning to real-life impact. And let's remember, teaching sustainability today means protecting humanity tomorrow. Slide 21, Health and Well-Being. Title: Healthy People, Healthy Society. When we talk about sustainability, We often focus on environmental preservation or economic development. But there is one truth we must never forget. Sustainability begins with people. And to sustain people, we must sustain their health. Health and well-being are not simply outcomes of sustainable development. They are essential drivers of it. Without access to healthcare, without good nutrition, without mental and emotional well-being, individuals cannot reach their full potential. And when people cannot thrive, neither can society. Slide 21 focuses on a critical pillar of social sustainability, ensuring that people are healthy in body and mind, and that public systems are in place to protect, support, and empower communities through every stage of life. 1. Access to healthcare hospital. Access to quality healthcare is a human right, not a privilege. Yet millions of people around the world, especially in low-income or marginalized communities, still lack basic health services. That includes preventive care like vaccines and screenings, safe childbirth and maternal health services, treatment for chronic and infectious diseases, emergency care in crises or natural disasters, affordable medications and support for disabilities. When people are denied health care, the consequences go far beyond individual suffering. Entire communities become more vulnerable. Productivity drops. Families fall into poverty. Educational outcomes decline. And public health crises, like pandemics, spread more easily and with greater damage. Health systems that are accessible, affordable, and equitable are essential infrastructure for sustainable societies. That means investing in universal healthcare systems, community clinics in underserved areas, culturally sensitive and language-accessible care, training more healthcare workers, removing financial barriers to treatment. And it also means addressing the root causes of poor health, like unsafe housing, water pollution, environmental toxins, and social exclusion. Because good health is not created in hospitals alone, it's created in the conditions of everyday life. 2. Nutrition and physical well-being. Red apple. Health doesn't start with medicine. It starts with what we eat, how we move, and how we live. Nutrition is the foundation of physical development, immune function, and brain health. And yet, over 820 million people worldwide face hunger. Over 2 billion suffer from micronutrient deficiencies. And at the same time, rates of obesity and diet-related diseases are rising globally. This paradox reflects a broken food system, one where healthy food is often inaccessible, unaffordable, or unavailable, especially in poorer communities. Sustainable health means transforming these systems to provide affordable access to fresh, nutritious foods, support for local farmers, and sustainable agriculture, education around healthy eating habits, school lunch programs, and food security safety nets. In addition to nutrition, physical activity is another pillar of well-being. But modern lifestyles, urbanization, screen time, long commutes, have made it harder for people to stay active. We need to design cities and communities that promote walkable neighborhoods and bike infrastructure, access to parks, playgrounds, and green spaces, recreational facilities for all ages and abilities, work-life balance that allows time for movement and rest. When people eat well and move regularly, their bodies are stronger, their minds are clearer, and their ability to participate in society through work, learning, and relationships significantly improves. 3. Mental health support. Blue Heart. Mental health is often invisible, but it is no less important than physical health. In fact, it is deeply interconnected. From anxiety and depression to PTSD and burnout, mental health conditions affect 1 in 4 people globally. And yet, stigma, underfunding, and lack of services mean that many suffer in silence. Mental health matters because it affects how we relate to others and manage stress. It impacts academic and workplace performance. It's tied to rates of substance abuse, homelessness, and suicide. It influences community safety and resilience. Sustainable societies must prioritize mental well-being as a core part of public health. That includes integrating mental health services into primary healthcare, providing support in schools, workplaces, and crisis centers, training mental health professionals in underserved areas, promoting public awareness and ending the stigma, recognizing that trauma, especially from poverty, war, and discrimination, requires systemic and compassionate care. Importantly, we must also recognize the link between environment and mental health. Pollution, climate anxiety, displacement, and natural disasters all take a toll. When the planet suffers, people feel it emotionally. A truly sustainable world is one where people feel safe, connected, and supported, not just physically, but emotionally, socially, and spiritually. The bigger picture, health as a cornerstone of social sustainability. Health is more than the absence of disease. It is the presence of well-being. And that well-being must be seen as a public good, not just a private matter. We must build societies where a sick child doesn't mean financial ruin. A pregnant woman can get safe, dignified care. A worker doesn't have to choose between food and medicine. A teenager struggling with depression can speak up and get help. An elder can age with dignity and support, not isolation. When we invest in health, we invest in education, productivity, innovation, and resilience. We reduce inequalities. We increase happiness. We build social trust. In short, we create a society worth living in. This is why the UN Sustainable Development Goal 3, good health and well-being, is not an isolated goal. It's one that supports every other goal, from reducing poverty to improving education, gender equality, and environmental sustainability. In the end, a sustainable future is not just one where forests grow and oceans heal. It is one where people live full, healthy lives, where the child is nourished, the elder is cared for, and the individual feels mentally strong and supported. Let us remember, a green economy is meaningless if people are too sick to participate in it. A clean city is not sustainable if its people are silently suffering. A society cannot thrive unless its people do. So as we plan, build, and advocate for sustainability, let's never lose sight of the human heart of the mission. Because healthy people make healthy decisions for themselves, for their communities, and for the planet. And that is the very essence of sustainability. Slide 22, Cultural Preservation. Title: Protecting Traditions and Heritage. Sustainability is often defined by what we can measure: carbon emissions, biodiversity loss, water use. But there's another dimension that's just as vital, yet often overlooked: culture. Culture is what gives meaning to our lives. It's how we understand the world, connect with others, and pass on knowledge across generations. It shapes identity, strengthens communities, and provides the stories, symbols, and values that guide human behavior. So when we talk about sustainability, we must recognize that it's not only about protecting natural resources. It's also about protecting the cultural richness that makes us human. Slide 22 brings us to a crucial point. Cultural preservation is not separate from sustainability. It is a core part of it. 1. Respect for traditions. Performing arts. Every community on Earth carries traditions, rituals, crafts, languages, dances, spiritual practices, and ways of living that have evolved over centuries, even millennia. These traditions aren't just relics of the past. They are living systems of knowledge and resilience, often containing practical, sustainable solutions to modern problems. Indigenous farming techniques that conserve water and maintain soil fertility. Traditional architectural styles that adapt to local climates with minimal energy use. Community festivals that foster social cohesion and intergenerational learning. Oral storytelling that preserves history, ethics, and identity. When we lose these traditions, whether through globalization, forced assimilation, conflict, or neglect, we don't just lose color or diversity. We lose knowledge, resilience, and connection. Respecting traditions means giving communities the right to define and protect their cultural expressions, ensuring that development doesn't erase or override cultural spaces, encouraging younger generations to value, learn, and evolve their cultural heritage, not abandon it, supporting cultural education and intergenerational dialogue. We must move beyond viewing culture as entertainment or tourism and start valuing it as a pillar of identity, healing, and sustainable living. 2. Safeguarding heritage sites. Cultural heritage isn't only intangible, it's also physical. Across the globe, we find temples, mosques, shrines, libraries, sacred groves, palaces, monuments, and archaeological sites that tell the story of humanity. These places are not only beautiful, they are sacred vessels of memory. They remind us of where we come from, what we've overcome, and who we are. And yet, they are increasingly under threat. urban expansion encroaching on sacred land, armed conflict destroying centuries-old monuments, climate change causing erosion, flooding, and desertification of heritage sites, looting and illegal trade in artifacts, neglect and underfunding leading to slow decay. Safeguarding these places is not just about preservation. It's about protecting the identity and dignity of the communities that hold them dear. We need strong legal protections for cultural heritage, investment in restoration and conservation, community-led management of cultural sites, climate adaptation strategies for vulnerable heritage zones, responsible tourism that respects, not exploits, local culture. When a heritage site is lost, a piece of human memory disappears forever. But when it is protected and respected, it becomes a source of pride, education, and even sustainable economic opportunity for generations to come. 3. Diversity enriches society. Globe showing Americas. Cultural preservation is not about freezing traditions in time or clinging to the past. It's about celebrating diversity as a strength and creating space for cultures to grow, adapt, and thrive. In a globalized world, there's increasing pressure to conform, to speak the same languages, wear the same clothes, consume the same media, buy the same products. This creates efficiency, but also cultural homogenization. We must ask, what do we lose when the world becomes too uniform? We lose linguistic diversity. Over 40% of the world's languages are endangered. We lose traditional medicine, food, and crafts that could benefit future generations. We lose stories, wisdom, and alternative worldviews that offer different paths forward. We lose empathy, because it's through cultural exchange that we truly understand each other. A truly sustainable society is not only green, it is colorful. It is one where people feel safe to express their culture, to speak their language, to celebrate their identity, and to share it with others. Promoting cultural diversity means protecting minority rights and cultural autonomy, supporting multi-language education and preservation, funding the arts, music, theater, and cultural storytelling, encouraging intercultural dialogue and mutual respect, ensuring migration and displacement do not erase cultural roots. Diversity isn't a challenge to be managed, it's a gift to be nurtured. It expands our imagination, our empathy, and our solutions to global problems. The bigger picture, culture as a pillar of sustainability. Culture is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's how humans have survived for thousands of years, by building meaning, connection, and resilience through shared identity and wisdom. In fact, the 3 pillars of sustainability, environmental, social, and economic, are all shaped by culture. How we treat the earth depends on our beliefs about nature. How we structure economies depends on our values about ownership and sharing. How we build societies depends on our traditions around governance, justice, and care. Culture is the software that runs the hardware of sustainability. If we fail to protect cultural richness, we undermine our ability to create a world that is just, inclusive, and adaptive. As we move toward global goals, fighting climate change, ending poverty, transforming energy systems, let us not forget who we are. Let us not forget the songs, the symbols, the stories, the dances, and the ceremonies that connect us to our roots and to each other. Because in protecting culture, we protect the soul of sustainability. Let us celebrate the indigenous elder who still teaches in their ancestral language, the artisan who still weaves with techniques passed down for centuries, the youth who blend modern tools with traditional knowledge to create new stories. Let us celebrate them not as quaint reminders of the past, but as leaders of the future. Sustainability isn't only about saving the planet. It's about saving ourselves and everything that makes us human. When we protect culture, we protect identity. When we protect identity, we build dignity. And when we build dignity, we lay the foundation for peace, justice, and true sustainability. Slide 23, Sustainable Cities. Title: Building Sustainable Communities. As the world becomes increasingly urbanized, our cities are becoming the focal points of both our challenges and our solutions. Today, more than half of the world's population lives in urban areas, and that number is expected to rise to nearly 70% by 2050. This rapid urban growth brings enormous opportunities, but also enormous risks. Cities are centers of culture, innovation, and economic activity. But they're also major contributors to carbon emissions, resource consumption, and social inequality. How we design and manage our cities today will determine whether we build a sustainable future or accelerate the crises we face. Slide 23 invites us to reimagine what cities can and should be. Sustainable cities must go beyond survival. They must be built for thriving, economically, socially, and environmentally. 1. Green infrastructure deciduous tree. The concrete jungle doesn't have to be lifeless. Green infrastructure redefines the way we think about urban development by integrating nature into the built environment. It includes urban forests and tree-lined streets, green roofs and living walls, parks, wetlands, and community gardens, permeable pavements that manage rainwater, river restoration, and urban biodiversity corridors. Green infrastructure is not just nice to have. It is essential for the climate resilience and health of any city. Here's why. Reduces urban heat island effect. Trees and vegetation cool cities naturally. Improves air quality. Plants absorb pollutants and carbon dioxide. Manages stormwater. Green spaces help absorb excess rainfall, preventing floods. Boosts mental and physical health. Access to green space has been shown to reduce stress, depression, and chronic illness. Strengthens community. Shared gardens and parks bring people together, fostering social cohesion. By investing in green infrastructure, we make our cities cooler, cleaner, and more livable, not just for today, but for generations to come. 2. Efficient and equitable public transport train. A truly sustainable city is one where you don't need a car to live well. Transportation is one of the largest sources of urban emissions. Yet in many cities, especially in the global south, public transport is overcrowded, unreliable, or unaffordable. And in wealthier cities, car-centric planning creates traffic, sprawl, and inequality. We need a bold shift toward efficient, accessible, and low-emission transport systems. This means expanding metro, tram, and bus networks powered by clean energy, designing bike-friendly and pedestrian-first infrastructure, making public transit affordable and safe for everyone, prioritizing transport access in underserved neighborhoods, using data and smart technologies to improve routes and reduce congestion. Public transport isn't just about moving people. It's about connecting lives to jobs, education, healthcare, and each other. And when done right, it reduces emissions, boosts productivity, and improves quality of life. Imagine a city where you can travel anywhere quickly, affordably, and without polluting the planet. That's not a dream. That's a design choice. 3. Inclusive urban planning cityscape. Sustainable cities must be inclusive cities. Urban planning has too often catered to the wealthy, pushing low-income communities to the margins, often into informal or unsafe settlements without access to basic services. Inclusive urban planning puts people at the center. It ensures that affordable housing is available for all income levels. Public services like water, electricity, and waste management reach every neighborhood. Slums and informal settlements are upgraded, not erased. Community voices, especially from marginalized groups, are included in the planning process. Zoning laws support mixed-use development, reducing commute times and fostering local economies. A sustainable city doesn't just serve the privileged, it empowers the vulnerable. And as we design cities, we must also think long-term. How will these spaces work for future generations? For children, elders, immigrants, people with disabilities? A city should not just be livable. It should be just. It should be resilient. And it should reflect the dignity and rights of all who call it home. The bigger picture, cities as engines of change. Cities are where the future is being built, block by block. They consume over 75% of global energy and produce over 70% of carbon emissions. But they are also the places where innovation happens fastest. That's why Sustainable Development Goal 11 is all about making cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Sustainable cities offer a vision of how we can fight climate change while growing economies, tackle inequality while fostering innovation, build density without sacrificing nature, create communities that are smart, green, and deeply human. But this doesn't happen by accident. It takes visionary policy, community engagement, and political will. It requires collaboration between government, private sector, civil society, and citizens. And it demands that we stop building cities for cars and profit and start building them for people and the planet. Cities are more than concrete and steel. They are where stories are lived, where cultures converge, where futures are shaped. A sustainable city is one where a child can walk to school under the shade of trees. A single mother can reach work and healthcare without a car. An elderly person can rest in a clean, safe park. A worker can afford a home near their job. A young person can breathe clean air, drink clean water, and dream big. Let us remember, the sustainability of our world depends on the sustainability of our cities. If we get cities right, we can solve many of the world's greatest challenges: climate change, inequality, health, and more. But if we get them wrong, those problems will only deepen. The choice is ours. Let us choose to build cities not just of bricks and glass, but of justice, opportunity, green space, and shared humanity. Because a sustainable city isn't just where we live, it's how we live together. Slide 24, Social Justice and Sustainability. Title: Justice and Resilience. Social sustainability is often described in terms of inclusion, well-being, and equity. But there's one word that must sit at the very center of it all: justice. Justice is not simply a legal or moral concept. It is a necessary condition for stability, for trust, and ultimately, for sustainability itself. Because when resources are unfairly distributed, instability follows. It doesn't happen overnight. It builds gradually, through underfunded schools, inaccessible healthcare, rising inequality, and communities pushed to the margins. Over time, these cracks in the system widen, and society becomes more divided, more fragile. Social sustainability also means justice. It means ensuring that the benefits of development, growth, and innovation are not concentrated in the hands of a few, while the burdens, pollution, poverty, displacement, are carried by the many. We cannot call a society sustainable if it sustains only some. Let's begin with the fair distribution of resources. Whether we're talking about land, water, energy, or opportunity, how these resources are distributed matters. Too often, sustainable development strategies focus on the quantity of resources: how much food we grow, how much energy we produce, how much funding we allocate. But just as important is the question of access. Who gets what? Who is left out? When access to basic needs like clean water, safe housing, education, or healthcare is determined by income, geography, or social status, we create systems of privilege and exclusion. Over time, these systems become deeply entrenched, locking generations into cycles of poverty or powerlessness. A fair distribution of resources means recognizing that justice is not just about equal treatment. It's about equitable outcomes. That sometimes, fairness means giving more attention and support to those who've been historically underserved, exploited, or ignored. This leads us directly to the second key point: addressing inequality. Inequality is not just a social issue. It is a sustainability issue. Widening inequality undermines social cohesion, erodes trust in institutions, and leads to social unrest. It weakens communities and fuels resentment. When large portions of the population feel excluded from economic growth, political power, or cultural representation, they are more vulnerable to crisis and less likely to support collective solutions. True sustainability means looking at who holds power, who has access, and who is left behind. It means facing uncomfortable truths about systemic racism, gender inequality, and economic exclusion. And it means taking bold, deliberate action to close those gaps, not just through policy, but through practice. We can't build resilient societies on unequal foundations. To address inequality, we must redesign systems that currently benefit a few at the cost of the many. That includes rethinking education, employment, housing, healthcare, and justice systems. It also requires inclusive decision-making, ensuring that those most affected by inequality have a real say in shaping the solutions. And this brings us to the final point: empowering marginalized voices. Too often, those who are most impacted by environmental degradation, poverty, and injustice are also those who are least heard. Indigenous communities, racial minorities, women, people with disabilities, and low-income groups are frequently left out of the very conversations that shape their future. Empowerment is not charity. It is not about giving people a voice. They already have voices. It's about listening to those voices. It's about creating systems that allow them to speak, be heard, and lead. This means including marginalized groups in policymaking, urban planning, climate action, and education reform. It means supporting grassroots movements, community-led solutions, and participatory governance. And it means recognizing the value, yes, the knowledge and leadership that these communities bring. When we empower marginalized voices, we don't just help individuals. We strengthen the entire system. Because justice builds trust, and trust is the foundation of resilience. Resilient societies aren't built with stronger walls or faster technology. They're built with trust, fairness, and inclusion. They're built when people believe that the system works for them, not against them. And that belief only exists when justice does. So, if we want to talk about sustainable cities, sustainable development, or sustainable futures, we must talk about social justice. Justice in how we distribute resources, justice in how we address inequality, and justice in who we listen to and who we empower. This isn't optional. It's essential, because a world without justice is not sustainable. And a world built on justice is one that can weather any storm. That is the promise and the power of social sustainability. Slide 25, Case Study. Copenhagen as a Sustainable City. Title, Real-Life Example, Copenhagen. When we talk about sustainability in theory, it can sometimes feel abstract. Concepts like carbon neutrality, green infrastructure, or renewable transition sound important, but they can be hard to visualize. That's why it's essential to ground these ideas in real-world examples. And one of the most compelling examples we have today is the city of Copenhagen. Copenhagen is often ranked among the most sustainable cities in the world, not because of one big innovation, but because of a consistent, long-term commitment to integrating sustainability into everyday life. The city has made it clear, sustainability isn't just a goal for the future. It's a lifestyle for the present. Let's begin with something simple, but transformational, transportation. In Copenhagen, 62% of all trips within the city are made by bicycle. This statistic alone tells a powerful story. It's not just a matter of preference. It's the result of decades of urban planning designed to make biking safe, convenient, and enjoyable. The city boasts more than 390 kilometers of dedicated bike lanes, separated from car traffic, with their own traffic lights, signage, and even bike highways that connect surrounding suburbs. This infrastructure allows people of all ages and backgrounds to choose cycling over driving, reducing emissions, and easing congestion. But this isn't only about the environment. It's also about health, accessibility, and equity. A city where more people bike is a city with lower healthcare costs, fewer traffic accidents, and a stronger sense of local community. In Copenhagen, cycling is not a fringe activity. It's a normal part of daily life, from children biking to school, to professionals commuting to work, to older adults staying active and mobile. The second pillar of Copenhagen's sustainability is its commitment to renewable energy. Copenhagen has set an ambitious goal to become the world's first carbon-neutral capital by 2025. While that target is bold, the city has already made remarkable progress. A significant portion of its energy comes from wind power, and the city has heavily invested in district heating systems, a highly efficient way to heat homes and buildings using excess heat from electricity production, waste incineration, and other sources. These systems aren't just efficient. They're integrated into a broader strategy that includes improving energy efficiency in buildings, transitioning to electric public transport, and encouraging energy-conscious behavior among residents. This shift to renewables doesn't just reduce carbon emissions. It increases energy security, creates jobs, and lowers long-term energy costs. It also shows that clean energy isn't just a dream. It's a practical, scalable solution being implemented right now in a major European capital. But perhaps the most impactful aspect of Copenhagen's success is its community-centered approach to planning. Sustainability isn't imposed from the top down. It's co-created with citizens. Urban design in Copenhagen prioritizes people over cars and communities over corporations. Public spaces are built with intention, designed to foster interaction, access to nature, and a high quality of life for everyone, not just the wealthy. Parks, waterfronts, and pedestrian zones are open and accessible. Public transportation is integrated and reliable. Even housing developments are required to meet strict environmental and social criteria. Community consultation plays a huge role in shaping policies. Planners actively engage with residents to understand their needs, gather feedback, and design spaces that reflect shared values. The result is not just a greener city, but a more livable, inclusive, and democratic one. In other words, Copenhagen demonstrates that sustainability doesn't have to come at the cost of comfort or convenience. In fact, it's the opposite. Sustainable choices, when thoughtfully implemented, can enhance everyday life. The city's success didn't happen overnight. It is the result of decades of long-term planning, political will, public engagement, and cultural commitment. It also shows that systemic change is possible when goals are clear and the community is involved. So what can we learn from Copenhagen? First, that sustainability is not a sacrifice, it's an investment. One that pays off in cleaner air, healthier lives, safer streets, and stronger communities. Second, that infrastructure matters. When cities are designed for people, sustainable behavior becomes the default, not the exception. And finally, that bold targets, like becoming carbon neutral, are achievable, not someday, but soon. Copenhagen shows us that the path to sustainability isn't paved with futuristic tech alone. It's paved with smart choices, inclusive planning, and a shared commitment to a better quality of life. This is the power of example. When we can point to a city like Copenhagen and say, look, this works, it becomes harder to argue that sustainability is unrealistic. It becomes a question of when, not if. And more importantly, it becomes an opportunity, not a burden. Slide 26. Interconnection, Society and Environment. Title: People and Nature Together. The relationship between people and nature is not optional. It's not a side note in the story of society. It's the foundation. Healthy societies depend on healthy environments. This is a truth we often overlook in modern development models, where economic growth is too often pursued at the expense of air, water, and land. But when ecosystems are destroyed, communities are weakened. When rivers are polluted, public health declines. When forests disappear, livelihoods vanish. From the food we eat to the air we breathe, every aspect of human life is supported by natural systems. The soil that grows our crops, the oceans that regulate our climate, the biodiversity that maintains ecological balance. None of these can be separated from the fate of our societies. Yet we continue to treat the environment as an external issue, something out there, instead of something deeply intertwined with our homes, our economies, our futures. This disconnection has real and painful consequences. Environmental degradation doesn't affect everyone equally. In fact, the burdens fall most heavily on those who are least responsible and least equipped to respond. Low-income communities, indigenous populations, and people of color often face the greatest exposure to pollution, the most limited access to clean resources, and the fewest protections under environmental policies. This is where the environmental justice movement becomes essential. Environmental justice is about fairness. It's about recognizing that environmental harm is not just an ecological issue, it's a human rights issue. It's about ensuring that no community is treated as disposable, and no group is forced to bear an unfair share of environmental risk. For example, in many industrialized countries, hazardous waste sites, incinerators, and factories are disproportionately located in low-income neighborhoods. These are the same communities that often lack access to healthcare, political representation, and legal recourse. The result is a compounding effect of environmental and social inequality. But environmental justice also brings forward solutions. It reminds us that sustainability must include equity. That clean air and safe water are not privileges, but rights. That green development must uplift, not displace. And that the voices of frontline communities must lead, not follow, in the decision-making process. Underlying all of this is a deeper principle: shared responsibility. We share one planet, one climate, one interconnected system. And yet, we continue to act as though our fates are separate, as though damage in one part of the world won't ripple across borders and generations. Whether we live in cities or villages, whether we are decision makers or everyday citizens, We all have a role to play in protecting the systems that sustain life. This doesn't mean everyone carries the same burden. In fact, equity means recognizing that those with greater power, wealth, and historical responsibility must do more. But it also means that every action matters, every choice, every policy, every voice. Shared responsibility is not only a call to accountability, it's also a call to unity. When we begin to see environmental protection as a common cause, we begin to act not out of fear, but out of solidarity. Not because we're forced to, but because we're connected to one another, across geography, across culture, and across time. The truth is, society and the environment are inseparable. We cannot build strong communities on a dying planet. We cannot achieve justice while ignoring the climate crisis. And we cannot secure peace while allowing the Earth's resources to be plundered for short-term gain. The environmental justice movement is not asking us to choose between people and planet. It is reminding us that we are not separate from nature. We are part of it, and we depend on its health as much as we depend on each other. This understanding must inform every aspect of how we think about sustainability, from urban planning to climate policy, from food systems to education. When we center both ecological integrity and social equity, we move closer to a world that is not only livable, but also just. We share one Earth. Its future is our future, and it will take shared responsibility to protect it, not just for ourselves, but for all who come after us. That is the task ahead of us, and it's one we must approach not with fear, but with courage, cooperation, and commitment. Slide 27. Social Sustainability Summary. Title: Key Takeaways. As we come to the end of this section on social sustainability, one truth stands out above all others. Social sustainability is about people. In every discussion about sustainability, whether it's about climate change, clean energy, or urban planning, it's easy to get lost in statistics, technology, and policies. But behind all of that are real human lives, communities, cultures, futures. At its core, social sustainability asks a simple but powerful question. What kind of world are we building for people? Let's take a moment to reflect on the key elements that make up this foundation. First, social sustainability promotes human rights and equity. This is non-negotiable. No society is sustainable if it leaves people behind. Whether through discrimination, exploitation, or systemic injustice, inequality corrodes the social fabric and weakens our collective future. Social sustainability insists that all people, regardless of race, gender, income, nationality, or ability, deserve dignity, opportunity, and voice. It means standing up for workers' rights, protecting the most vulnerable, and creating systems where power is shared, not hoarded. But this goes beyond fairness for its own sake. Equity builds resilience. It strengthens communities by ensuring everyone has access to the tools they need to survive, adapt, and thrive. Second, it means investing in education and health. These are not side issues. They are pillars. Access to quality education empowers people to participate fully in society, to innovate, and to solve complex challenges. It is one of the most powerful levers for social mobility and long-term prosperity. Likewise, access to healthcare isn't just a marker of progress, it's a human right. A healthy population is a productive population. Disease and poor health drain resources, widen inequalities, and weaken national stability. Social sustainability demands that we view education and health not as costs, but as investments in our collective future. They are the foundation upon which all other development goals must rest. Third, social sustainability means preserving cultures and building fair cities. Cultural heritage, whether through language, art, traditions, or community practices, gives identity and meaning to our lives. It's how people connect to each other and to the places they call home. But globalization and urban expansion often threaten this heritage. Entire communities are displaced for development. Indigenous languages vanish. Urban planning decisions are made without input from the people most affected. Social sustainability means protecting cultural diversity. It means designing cities that are inclusive, affordable, and built for everyone, not just for those who can afford them. Fair cities are walkable, green, accessible, and safe. They provide public space, affordable housing, reliable transport, and opportunities for participation. They celebrate local culture instead of erasing it. And most importantly, they are places where everyone can live with dignity. Finally, social sustainability links society with the environment. This connection is crucial and often overlooked. A fair and just society cannot exist on a degraded planet. And environmental solutions will fail if they don't include people, especially those most affected by climate change and ecological collapse. Social sustainability bridges this gap. It recognizes that we need both environmental stewardship and social equity to create a livable future. That a city with electric buses is not truly sustainable if its poorest residents can't afford the fare. That planting trees means little if the communities nearby are denied access to clean water. This intersection, where ecology meets justice and where climate meets community, is where some of the most important work must happen. Because sustainability is not just about saving the planet. It's about saving each other and making sure that no one is sacrificed in the process. To conclude, social sustainability is not a single issue. It is a framework for thinking about development that puts people, all people, at the center. It promotes fairness and equity. It prioritizes education and health. It protects cultures and pushes us to build cities that work for everyone. And it reminds us that the environment is not separate from society, but essential to it. In the end, a fair and just world is the only foundation for a truly sustainable one. That is the message of social sustainability, and it's one we can no longer afford to ignore. Slide 29, the triple bottom line. Title: People, Planet, Profit. For a long time, the success of a business, or even a country, was measured in one way: profit. The logic was simple. If revenues were high and costs were low, then everything was working. If GDP was growing, the economy was healthy. But over time, we've learned that this narrow focus on financial gain comes with hidden costs: costs to society, costs to the environment, and costs to future generations. That's why the concept of the triple bottom line has emerged as a new standard, one that asks organizations to measure success across three dimensions: people, planet, and profit. This is more than a business framework. It's a shift in mindset. It's about recognizing that economic activity doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in the context of communities and ecosystems. And if we want those communities and ecosystems to survive and thrive, then we must redefine what success really means. Let's start with the first pillar: people. This represents social responsibility, how organizations impact individuals, workers, communities, and society as a whole. A company may be profitable, but if its employees are underpaid, its factories are unsafe, or its practices reinforce inequality, then it is not socially sustainable. True success means that business does not come at the expense of human dignity. Social responsibility includes providing fair wages, safe working conditions, diversity and inclusion, and respecting human rights across the supply chain. It also involves supporting the communities where companies operate through education, health programs, local hiring, and investment in infrastructure. But this isn't just about doing good for public image. It's about building long-term value through trust, loyalty, and reputation. Companies that care for people tend to attract and retain top talent. They are more resilient during crises, and they are more in tune with changing public expectations. In other words, investing in people is not a cost. It's a competitive advantage. The second pillar is planet, environmental care. No business operates without using natural resources. Whether it's water, energy, land, or raw materials, the economy depends on a healthy environment. But historically, we've treated nature as infinite and pollution as someone else's problem. That model no longer works. Environmental sustainability means reducing emissions, minimizing waste, protecting ecosystems, and using resources efficiently and responsibly. It also means innovating, developing new products, materials, and processes that are regenerative, not just less harmful. Businesses have a major role to play here. They can lead the shift to renewable energy, design for the circular economy, and ensure their operations support climate goals rather than undermine them. More and more, consumers and investors are demanding this kind of accountability. Supply chains are being scrutinized, carbon footprints are being calculated, and companies that fail to act on environmental issues are seeing real financial consequences. So when we talk about planet in the triple bottom line, We're not just talking about moral obligation. We're talking about risk management, innovation, and future readiness. Finally, the third pillar is profit, but viewed through a more holistic lens. Profit still matters. Businesses need to be financially healthy in order to grow, employ people, and invest in solutions. But under the triple bottom line, profit is not the end goal. It's one piece of a bigger picture. In fact, businesses that align profit with purpose are finding that they can outperform their peers in the long run. Sustainable practices often lead to cost savings through efficiency. Ethical branding builds customer loyalty, and strong governance helps companies avoid legal, reputational, and operational risks. In today's market, success is not just about quarterly earnings. It's about long-term value creation for shareholders, yes, but also for stakeholders, employees, customers, communities, and the planet. The triple bottom line doesn't ask companies to choose between doing well and doing good. It shows that the two can reinforce each other when approached strategically and sincerely. All around the world, we're seeing a shift. Companies are embedding sustainability into their mission statements, tracking impact metrics, reporting on ESG, environmental, social, and governance, performance, and linking executive pay to sustainability outcomes. Investors are rewarding long-term thinking. Customers are favoring ethical brands. And young professionals are choosing to work for companies that reflect their values. In short, the market is evolving. And the triple bottom line is no longer a fringe idea. It's becoming the new baseline. The question now is no longer, can we afford to think sustainably? It's, can we afford not to? To sum up, people, we must ensure that growth benefits workers, communities, and future generations. Planet, we must protect the ecosystems and resources that make life and business possible. Profit, we must continue to build economically strong enterprises, but not at the cost of everything else. The triple bottom line is not a compromise. It's a better way forward. It redefines success not as the wealth of a few, but the well-being of many. Not as growth for today, but prosperity for the long run. That's the kind of economy the future needs, and it's one we all have a part in shaping. Slide 30, Green Economy. Title, Shaping the Green Economy. What comes to mind when we think of economic progress? Traditionally, it's been about industrial output, financial growth, and expanding markets. But we now know that this conventional model, based on resource extraction, fossil fuels, and overconsumption, has come at a high cost: climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and growing inequality. So today, we face a defining question. Can we grow our economies without damaging our planet or excluding our people? The answer is yes, and it lies in the rise of the green economy. The green economy is not a niche or side project. It is a new economic paradigm, one that prioritizes sustainability, inclusiveness, and long-term resilience. It's about ensuring that economic activity actively restores, rather than harms, the environment, and that the benefits of that activity are shared equitably across society. In this new model, economic growth and environmental protection go hand in hand, and the transition is already underway. Let's begin with the first key element: jobs in clean industries. One of the strongest arguments for the green economy is that it's not just good for the environment, it's a powerful engine for job creation. Around the world, we're seeing a surge in employment opportunities across renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, green manufacturing, and ecotourism. Solar and wind power are now among the fastest-growing job sectors globally. Countries investing in energy efficiency are creating jobs in retrofitting, insulation, and smart grid technology. This is what makes the green economy so compelling. It doesn't force us to choose between the environment and employment. It offers a path to both. And these are not just any jobs, they're future-proof jobs. Jobs that are aligned with long-term climate goals, that are less vulnerable to fossil fuel volatility, and that provide meaningful work contributing to a better world. Governments and industries that embrace this shift will be the ones that stay competitive, not only in terms of economics, but also in terms of innovation and global leadership. The second major pillar is green technologies. Technology is a key driver of transformation. And today, green technologies are at the forefront of solving some of our most pressing challenges, while unlocking new economic opportunities. This includes innovations like solar panels and battery storage that reduce reliance on fossil fuels, electric vehicles and hydrogen fuel cells that cut transport emissions, precision farming and vertical agriculture that reduce water use and land degradation, a green building materials that lower carbon footprints and improve energy efficiency. These technologies don't just reduce environmental harm. They open new markets, create value chains, and improve quality of life. But to fully realize their potential, we must invest in research, development, and deployment, especially in lower-income regions where climate vulnerability is highest. Green innovation also depends on skills training, education, and digital infrastructure. We need workers, entrepreneurs, engineers, and policymakers who understand not only the tools, but the systems that support them. This is why the green economy is more than a technology agenda. It's a human development agenda. Third, we must talk about sustainable infrastructure. Infrastructure shapes how we live. Roads, buildings, energy grids, public transport systems. They are the physical foundation of our economies. And once built, they last for decades. That means the decisions we make now will define our sustainability path far into the future. In a green economy, infrastructure must be resilient, low carbon, and inclusive. That means public transportation systems that reduce emissions and connect communities, energy grids that support clean power and distributed generation, buildings designed for efficiency, comfort, and climate adaptability, water and waste systems that support circular economies. Sustainable infrastructure is not only environmentally responsible, it's economically smart. Every dollar spent on green infrastructure generates jobs, boosts local economies, and reduces the long-term costs of climate-related disasters. Cities and nations that prioritize this today will be more livable, more competitive, and more secure tomorrow. So when we talk about shaping the green economy, we're talking about more than just going green. We're talking about a comprehensive economic transformation, one that creates opportunity, protects the environment, and promotes equity. We're talking about moving away from a linear, extractive economy toward a circular and regenerative one. We're talking about building a system where clean industries create jobs, where green technologies drive innovation, and where infrastructure supports sustainability, not undermines it. And above all, we're talking about doing this together, with governments, businesses, communities, and individuals working in partnership to accelerate the shift. To conclude, the green economy is about growth that is both environmentally friendly and socially inclusive. It creates jobs in renewable energy, sustainable transport, and eco-friendly construction. It embraces innovation through clean technology. It invests in infrastructure that serves both people and planet. This is not a future fantasy. It is happening now. And those who lead the way, those who shape this economy with purpose, will not only protect the earth, they will unlock resilient, lasting prosperity. Because the best investment we can make is in a future that works for everyone. Slide 31, Circular Economy. Title: From Linear to Circular. For much of modern history, our economic system has followed a very straightforward pattern. Take, make, dispose. We extract raw materials from the earth. We use them to make products. And when those products are no longer useful, or even just no longer wanted, we throw them away. This is what we call a linear economy. And while this model has fueled rapid growth and industrial development, it comes with serious consequences. It relies on the constant use of finite resources. It generates massive amounts of waste and pollution. And it assumes, wrongly, that the planet can endlessly supply materials and endlessly absorb the damage. Today, we know better. The linear economy is unsustainable. It is not just wasteful, it is dangerous. It drives climate change, depletes biodiversity, and pushes ecosystems past their breaking points. And that's why we must transition to something better: the circular economy. So, what exactly is a circular economy? At its core, the circular economy is about rethinking our entire system of production and consumption. Instead of taking resources, making products, and discarding them, we design systems where materials stay in use for as long as possible. Products are reused, repaired, refurbished, remanufactured, and eventually recycled back into new raw materials. This is not just about recycling bottles and cans. It's about a fundamental redesign of our economy, where waste is seen as a resource and value is extracted from materials at every stage of their life cycle. Where the linear model ends in a landfill, the circular model loops back again and again. Let's break down what this shift means in practical terms. First, it means rethinking design. Products should be made with durability, repairability, and recyclability in mind. This means designing phones that can be easily taken apart and upgraded, packaging that can be composted or reused, clothes that can be recycled into new textiles instead of ending up in landfills. Second, it means extending product life. Instead of encouraging throwaway culture, the circular economy promotes maintenance, repair, and reuse. Businesses are beginning to offer services that help customers fix or upgrade their products instead of replacing them. We're seeing a rise in product-as-a-service models, where companies rent out goods instead of selling them, maintaining ownership and responsibility for their life cycle. Think about how car sharing and tool rental platforms reduce the need for every household to own everything individually. Third, it means improving systems for recycling and resource recovery. Waste is no longer an endpoint. It becomes a starting point for something new. Materials like plastics, metals, glass, and even organic waste can be reprocessed and reintegrated into new products. But to make this work at scale, we need better infrastructure, stronger policies, and smarter business models. It also means engaging consumers, educating people about circular practices, and creating systems that make sustainable choices easy and accessible. You might be wondering, beyond environmental benefits, what does the circular economy offer economically? The answer is a lot. By keeping resources in use, we reduce costs associated with raw material extraction. We build resilience into supply chains, especially during disruptions. We stimulate new industries, such as recycling innovation, repair services, and sustainable product design. In fact, the circular economy represents a massive economic opportunity. According to global studies, circular strategies could generate trillions in economic value by 2030, while creating jobs and strengthening local economies. More efficient resource use means more productivity. Less waste means lower disposal costs. Smarter design means more value extracted from every material. The result is a system that is leaner, cleaner, and more competitive in the long term. But the benefits aren't just economic. Circularity also helps us address the environmental crisis we face today. By reducing the need for new resource extraction, we cut down on habitat destruction and deforestation. By reducing production, we lower greenhouse gas emissions. And by reducing waste, we limit pollution in our oceans, air, and soil. In fact, some of the most critical climate solutions rely on circular thinking. Reusing building materials, recycling metals for renewable energy infrastructure, creating closed-loop food systems that turn organic waste into compost or energy. Circularity is not a luxury. It's a necessity if we want to stay within planetary boundaries. So what does this mean for us? It means that if we are serious about sustainability, we can't just focus on reducing consumption. We need to redesign consumption itself. We need to move from a system built on endless extraction and short-term use to one built on efficiency, regeneration, and care. This is not just a change in behavior, it's a change in thinking. A circular economy challenges us to see waste as a failure of imagination and reuse as a source of innovation. And in doing so, it offers us a blueprint for an economy that doesn't just work harder, it works smarter. To conclude, in a linear economy, we take resources, make products, and then throw them away. That model is no longer sustainable. The circular economy offers a powerful alternative. It redesigns our systems to keep materials in use. It promotes reuse, recycling, and regeneration. And it maximizes the value of every resource we extract, every product we make, and every service we deliver. This shift is already underway. And those who embrace circularity today are not only reducing environmental pressure, they are helping to shape a more resilient, efficient, and future-ready economy. It's time to move from linear to circular, and it's time to lead that change together. Slide 32, Fair Trade and Ethical Business. Title, Business with Responsibility. When we talk about economic sustainability, we often focus on numbers, GDP, jobs, investments, profits. But sustainability isn't just about financial metrics, it's about values. about how business is done, not just how much it earns. Because in a sustainable future, the economy must serve people, not exploit them. That's where the principles of fair trade and ethical business come in. At the heart of these models is a powerful idea that every product has a story about where it came from, how it was made, and most importantly, who made it. Behind every cup of coffee, every t-shirt, every piece of technology, there is a person, a farmer, a garment worker, a factory employee. And for too long, those people have remained invisible in the global economy. Underpaid, overworked, and, in many cases, unsafe. Economic sustainability also means fairness in business. And it begins with recognizing the human impact of our economic choices. Let's begin with the first pillar, fair wages and safe working conditions. At its most basic level, ethical business means ensuring that people who contribute to the economy, especially those in the lowest paid roles, are treated with dignity and respect. That means earning a living wage, not just a minimum wage, working in clean, safe environments, having access to breaks, protective gear, and basic labor rights, being protected from child labor, forced labor, and abuse. This is the foundation of fair trade. Fair trade is not charity. It is a partnership. It guarantees that producers in developing countries, farmers, artisans, and workers receive fair compensation for their labor and can reinvest in their communities. When you buy a fair trade certified product, you're not just buying goods. You're helping build schools, fund healthcare, and protect workers' rights around the world. Fair wages and safe conditions should not be the exception in business. They should be the standard. The second key element is ethical supply chains. In today's global economy, supply chains are long, complex, and often opaque. A single product may involve raw materials from one country, manufacturing in another, and packaging in a third. This complexity creates opportunities for exploitation and makes it easy for unethical practices to be hidden deep within the chain. For example, cocoa sourced using child labor, clothing produced in sweatshops, electronics assembled in unsafe factories. But ethical businesses are taking a different approach. They are mapping their supply chains, identifying risks, and working with suppliers who share their values. They are conducting third-party audits, setting supplier codes of conduct, and increasing transparency in their operations. Some are going even further, partnering directly with farmers and workers to ensure traceability and shared value from source to shelf. This is not only the right thing to do, it also makes business sense. In a world where trust is currency, companies that act ethically build stronger brands, deeper loyalty, and long-term resilience. But the responsibility doesn't stop with businesses. The third pillar is consumer responsibility. Because every purchase we make is a signal, a vote, a message to the market. When we choose to support ethical brands, when we ask questions about sourcing, when we prioritize quality over convenience, we are telling businesses what kind of world we want to live in. We live in a time of unprecedented consumer power. Information is at our fingertips. Labels, certifications, and company reports are more accessible than ever. We can use that power to support companies that pay their workers fairly, reduce their environmental footprint, invest in communities, commit to transparency, and we can hold accountable those who don't. Consumer demand has already driven major changes. It helped make fair trade a global movement. It's pushing fast fashion to reconsider its practices. It's making sustainable products more mainstream. Our choices matter. They shape markets. They influence policy. And they build momentum for a more ethical economy. So what does business with responsibility truly mean? It means putting people before profits, not as a trade-off, but as a business model. It means recognizing that the global economy is built by people and should work for people. It means shifting from exploitative practices to equitable partnerships, from hidden supply chains to transparent accountability, from passive consumption to active, informed choice. And most importantly, it means seeing sustainability not just as a set of environmental goals, but as a moral commitment to fairness and justice. To conclude, fair trade ensures that farmers, artisans, and workers receive fair wages and work in safe conditions. Ethical businesses monitor supply chains to prevent exploitation. And as consumers, our choices send powerful signals. Supporting ethical companies drives sustainable practices. Economic sustainability cannot exist without ethical responsibility. And by demanding better from businesses, from governments, and from ourselves, we can build an economy that is not only profitable, but principled. An economy where every product tells a story we can be proud of. Slide 33, Responsible Investment. Title, Financing Sustainability. When we talk about building a sustainable future, we often focus on technology, policy, and consumer behavior. But there's another powerful force shaping that future: money. How we invest, where capital flows, and what it supports, has a massive impact on the world we're creating. In fact, the financial system is one of the most influential tools we have in the fight for sustainability. Because every investment is a decision that says, we support this, or we don't. That's where responsible investment comes in. Responsible investing is about aligning financial goals with environmental, social, and ethical values. It means choosing to put money not just where it grows, but where it does good, where it contributes to a better planet, healthier communities, and more just systems. And at the heart of this movement is something called ESG investing. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. Let's break that down. Environmental. How does a company impact the planet? Does it emit carbon? Does it manage resources wisely? Is it helping or harming ecosystems? Social. How does a company treat people, its workers, customers, and communities? Does it support human rights, diversity, and safe labor conditions? Governance. How is the company run? Is it transparent, accountable, and ethical in its leadership and decision-making? ESG investing uses these criteria to evaluate companies, not just based on profit, but based on their impact. This approach is growing rapidly. More and more investors, from large pension funds to individual shareholders, are demanding that their money reflects their values. They want returns, yes, but not at the cost of environmental destruction, human suffering, or corporate corruption. Responsible investment recognizes that long-term financial success is deeply connected to the health of our planet and society. Because if the planet fails, the market fails. If inequality grows unchecked, instability rises. If companies ignore ethics, risk multiplies. So, ESG is not about charity. It's about smart investing for a sustainable future. Now let's look at a key principle of responsible investment: long-term value over short-term gains. For decades, the financial world has been dominated by short-term thinking, quarterly earnings, immediate returns, fast profits. But the real costs of that mindset are becoming clear. Short-termism leads to overexploitation of resources, underinvestment in innovation, environmental damage, labor abuses, fragile supply chains. Sustainable investing flips that model. It asks, what will generate value 10, 20, or 50 years from now? What businesses will still be relevant in a low-carbon economy? What companies are preparing for climate risk, social unrest, or future regulation? By looking at the bigger picture, ESG investors identify resilient, forward-thinking businesses. These companies often outperform in the long run, not just financially, but in reputation, adaptability, and stakeholder trust. In fact, during economic downturns or global crises, ESG portfolios tend to be more stable and less volatile than traditional ones. So this isn't about sacrificing return, it's about redefining what success looks like. And one of the most important tools responsible investors use is divestment. Divestment means removing capital from harmful industries that pollute, exploit, or undermine sustainable progress. This includes fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas, sectors that are major contributors to climate change. It can also include companies involved in tobacco, weapons manufacturing, deforestation, unethical labor practices. Divestment is not just symbolic. It creates real financial pressure. It signals to the market that these industries are increasingly risky, outdated, and undesirable. At the same time, funds are being reallocated into clean energy, sustainable agriculture, circular economy startups, green infrastructure, and social enterprises. This redirection of capital is accelerating the growth of industries that are part of the solution, not the problem. And the momentum is real. University endowments, faith groups, national banks, and even global insurers are now divesting from fossil fuels and making climate-smart investments. This is how financial influence becomes environmental action. But this isn't just the job of Wall Street or major institutions. Each of us has a role to play in responsible investment. If you have a retirement account, a mutual fund, or even a savings plan, you are an investor. And you have the power to ask questions like, what companies are my funds supporting? Do they align with my values? Can I switch to a more sustainable portfolio? Many banks, fund managers, and platforms now offer ESG options. There are tools to help you screen investments and choose funds that prioritize sustainability. The more we demand these options, the more the market will respond. Remember, money moves markets, and markets shape the future. To conclude, investors play a huge role in sustainability. Responsible investment considers environmental, social, and governance (ESG) factors. Instead of chasing short-term gains, it focuses on long-term value. And increasingly, capital is shifting away from harmful industries like coal and oil and into clean energy and sustainable enterprises. Responsible investment is about more than growing wealth. It's about financing the world we want to live in. A world that is just, a world that is clean, a world that is built to last. And through the power of capital, we can help make that world real, not someday, but now. Slide 28. Introduction to Economic Sustainability. Title: Economy for the Long Run. When we talk about sustainability, the conversation often starts with the environment, and rightly so. But the sustainability of our economy is just as crucial. Because at the end of the day, a truly sustainable society needs a strong and stable economic foundation. But not just any kind of economy. We need an economy that works not just for today, but for tomorrow. One that doesn't sacrifice the future in pursuit of short-term gains. That's what we mean by economic sustainability. Economic sustainability is about building systems that deliver long-term prosperity. It means creating jobs, fostering innovation, generating wealth, but doing so in a way that doesn't deplete our natural resources, harm communities, or create deeper inequalities. In other words, economic sustainability ensures that we grow and prosper without destroying the planet or exploiting people. It's about resilience, balance, and responsibility. Let's start with the idea of long-term prosperity. In traditional economic models, success is measured by short-term growth, quarterly profits, annual GDP increases, or rising stock market values. But these indicators often tell an incomplete story. They might show that a company or country is making money, but at what cost? Is that growth contributing to inequality? Is it relying on fossil fuels that accelerate climate change? Is it draining natural resources or harming workers? Economic sustainability asks us to look beyond the next fiscal year. It asks us to build systems that provide stability and opportunity not just now, but for generations to come. This includes investing in sustainable industries, promoting fair wages, supporting small businesses, and creating jobs in sectors like renewable energy, circular economies, sustainable agriculture, and green technology. It means thinking in decades, not quarters. But to make this work, we must also balance economic growth with environmental protection. This is one of the biggest challenges we face today, because for much of modern history, economic growth has come at the expense of the environment. Natural resources have been treated as infinite. Pollution has been treated as someone else's problem. And environmental damage has been viewed as an unfortunate, but acceptable, side effect of progress. That way of thinking is no longer tenable. We now understand that endless extraction and unchecked growth are not just environmentally unsustainable, they're economically risky. The costs of inaction, climate-related disasters, resource scarcity, supply chain disruptions, mass migration, are rising rapidly. Economic sustainability calls for a new kind of growth. One that is clean, inclusive, and circular. One where companies and governments ask not just how much are we making, but also how are we making it, and who does it benefit? This requires a shift in how we value success. We must begin measuring wealth not just in monetary terms, but also in terms of ecological health, worker well-being, and social equity. Growth, when it happens, must be smart, not extractive, profitable, but also regenerative. Which brings us to our third point, responsible resource use. Our planet's resources, whether it's water, soil, minerals, forests, or fossil fuels, are finite. Yet we are consuming them at a rate far beyond what the Earth can replenish. Responsible resource use means moving away from the take, make, waste model of consumption and production. It means designing products to last longer, reducing waste, recycling materials, and investing in renewable alternatives. This is where circular economy principles come in, where materials are reused, energy is recovered, and waste is minimized. It's where businesses see efficiency, innovation, and sustainability as interconnected, not conflicting goals. At the same time, we must ensure that these practices are applied equitably. The burden of responsible consumption should not fall only on individuals or consumers. Businesses, governments, and institutions must lead by rethinking supply chains, setting ambitious sustainability targets, and being transparent about their impacts. Responsible resource use isn't just about avoiding environmental collapse, it's also about economic competitiveness. In a future shaped by climate risk and resource limits, the most resilient economies will be those that adapt early and build sustainably. So ultimately, economic sustainability asks us to consider a powerful question. How do we create wealth today without bankrupting tomorrow? The answer lies in transforming the very goals of our economic systems, from short-term profit to long-term resilience, from growth at all costs to growth with conscience, from taking as much as we can to building as wisely as we must. An economy for the long run is not just possible, it's necessary. And it starts with rethinking what we value, how we measure success, and who we include in the process. Because a thriving economy, a healthy planet, and a just society are not separate goals. They are interdependent, and they must be built together. Slide 34, Case Study, Renewable Energy Market. Title, Economic Benefits of Renewables. We often hear that sustainability is a cost, that protecting the planet means sacrificing economic growth. That clean energy is a noble ideal, but not a practical solution. Today, I want to challenge that idea, because the data tells a very different story. A story where sustainability and profitability are not in conflict, but are, in fact, becoming one and the same. Nowhere is this more clear than in the global renewable energy market. This sector, once dismissed as expensive and unreliable, is now one of the fastest growing and most economically dynamic industries in the world. It is transforming not only how we power our homes and cities, but how we think about economic development, job creation, and energy security. Let's begin with the most visible impact: jobs. Across the globe, the rise of renewable energy is creating millions of new employment opportunities. From solar panel installers in the US, to wind turbine technicians in Denmark, to engineers, electricians, project managers, manufacturers, and researchers worldwide, the renewable energy sector is powering human livelihoods. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, the sector now supports over 13 million jobs globally, and that number is only expected to rise. Why? Because renewables are not just a source of energy. They are a labor-intensive, future-focused, and innovation-driven field. Solar and wind farms require planning, construction, installation, operation, maintenance, and eventual upgrading. These are not jobs that can be outsourced easily. Many of them are local, stable, and future-proof. In fact, green energy jobs are often safer, better paid, and more resilient than those in fossil fuel sectors, especially as the world accelerates its transition toward low-carbon energy. So if we're serious about building an economy that is inclusive, robust, and ready for the future, renewables are a cornerstone. Next, let's talk about cost. One of the most persistent myths about clean energy is that it's too expensive. That may have been true 20 years ago, but today it's outdated. In the last decade, the cost of solar and wind power has fallen dramatically. The price of solar PV modules has dropped by over 80%. Onshore wind costs have declined by more than 60%. Utility-scale renewable projects are now cheaper than new fossil fuel plants in many regions of the world. This is a game changer. We are no longer choosing between sustainability and affordability. We are choosing both. Lower costs mean that clean energy is accessible to more people, communities, and businesses. It means that developing countries can leapfrog over polluting technologies. It means that consumers and governments alike can save money, while reducing emissions. And as technology continues to improve, economies of scale grow, and storage solutions become more advanced, these prices will continue to fall. What we're witnessing is not just a technological shift, it's a market revolution. The third pillar of renewables' economic benefit is long-term stability. Unlike fossil fuels, which are vulnerable to price volatility, geopolitical risk, and finite supply, renewable energy offers something incredibly valuable: predictability. The sun does not send invoices. The wind doesn't fluctuate with market speculation. There are no supply shocks for sunlight or air. This kind of energy is resilient. It shields countries and communities from the disruptions of global fuel markets. It reduces dependence on unstable or unfriendly suppliers. It enhances national energy security. And because renewables don't deplete the Earth's resources, they provide a foundation for long-term prosperity. A power system built on renewable sources is inherently sustainable, economically, environmentally, and socially. That's why governments and businesses around the world are doubling down on clean energy, not just because it's good for the planet, but because it makes financial sense. So what does this case study teach us? It teaches us that renewable energy is not a burden, it's a benefit. It creates jobs. It reduces costs. It brings stability and resilience to our economies. It also opens the door to innovation, sparking new industries in energy storage, smart grids, electrification, and green infrastructure. It encourages collaboration between the public and private sectors, between scientists and entrepreneurs, between nations and local communities. And perhaps most importantly, it shows us that the transition to a cleaner future is not just possible, it's profitable. To conclude, the renewable energy market shows that sustainability and profitability can go hand in hand. Solar and wind energy costs have dropped dramatically in the last decade, making them competitive with fossil fuels. At the same time, renewables have created millions of jobs worldwide. This is a win-win for both the economy and the environment. As we look to the future, the choice is clear. We can invest in systems that pollute, degrade, and deplete. Or we can invest in systems that restore, empower, and endure. Renewables represent not just clean energy, but smart economics. And the sooner we embrace this opportunity, the faster we can build a future that is both sustainable and successful. Slide 35, Poverty and Economic Sustainability. Title: Reducing Poverty Through Sustainable Growth. When we speak about sustainability, it's easy to focus on the environment or on innovation. But one of the most critical and urgent dimensions of sustainability is human well-being, especially for those who are most vulnerable. No economy can call itself sustainable if it leaves millions behind in poverty. Economic growth that benefits only the top percent, while leaving the majority struggling, may increase GDP, but it does not build a just or resilient society. True sustainability must include social and economic justice. And that means addressing poverty, not as a side issue, but as a central priority. Let's begin with a simple but powerful idea. Growth must be inclusive. What does that mean? It means that economic development should not just benefit corporations, investors, or city centers. It should also reach rural areas, underrepresented communities, and people living on the economic margins. Too often, traditional economic models have generated growth that is unequal by design. Wealth is concentrated at the top, while those at the bottom see little improvement in their quality of life. Meanwhile, access to opportunity, whether it's education, healthcare, or capital, is limited to the privileged few. Inclusive economic growth flips this model. It focuses on creating policies and systems that lift everyone, not just some. It invests in public goods, like affordable housing, universal healthcare, and strong education systems. It supports small businesses and local economies. It breaks down the barriers that keep people trapped in cycles of poverty. And when we do this, we don't just help individuals, we strengthen entire economies. Because when more people can participate in the economy, when they have income, access, and autonomy, they spend, invest, innovate, and contribute. That's not charity. That's smart economics. One of the most effective tools for inclusive growth is microfinance. Microfinance is the practice of providing small loans, savings accounts, or financial services to people who are typically excluded from the formal banking sector, especially in low-income and rural communities. With even a modest loan, sometimes just $50 or $100, a person can start a small business. A woman in Bangladesh opens a sewing service. A farmer in Kenya invests in better tools. A street vendor in Peru expands her stall. These small ventures may seem minor, but collectively, they are transformative. They generate income. They foster independence. They enable people to build assets and escape poverty, not temporarily, but permanently. Microfinance is especially impactful for women, who make up the majority of microborrowers worldwide. When women have access to capital, they not only support their families, but also uplift entire communities. Studies consistently show that when women earn, they reinvest in education, nutrition, and local development. Entrepreneurship, powered by microfinance, is a powerful engine for inclusive, sustainable economic growth. It tells us that innovation doesn't just happen in Silicon Valley. It happens in the villages, towns, and informal economies that form the backbone of so many nations. But inclusive growth also requires that we tackle a deeper issue: inequality. Today, the gap between rich and poor is growing in many parts of the world. A small percentage of people own a large portion of global wealth, while billions still struggle to meet basic needs. This is not only unjust, it is economically unstable. High levels of inequality weaken consumer demand, increase political polarization, undermine social trust, and often lead to civil unrest. A sustainable economy cannot be built on a fragile, deeply unequal foundation. Reducing inequality means creating fair tax systems, closing gender pay gaps, increasing access to education and health, supporting labor rights and living wages, investing in communities that have been historically excluded or exploited. This is not about redistribution for its own sake. It's about ensuring that every person has the opportunity to thrive, not just survive. When prosperity is shared, economies are stronger, communities are healthier, and societies are more peaceful and more productive. Let's return to the heart of this issue. Sustainable economies must address poverty. Growth must be inclusive, lifting people out of poverty and reducing inequality. Tools like microfinance empower small entrepreneurs to start businesses. True sustainability is when prosperity is shared, not concentrated in the hands of a few. This vision is not utopian. It is already happening, where governments, businesses, and communities are working together to build systems that serve all people, not just some. Imagine a world where every child has access to school, every worker earns a fair wage, every entrepreneur, no matter how poor, can access credit, and every community sees itself reflected in national growth. This is what economic sustainability must mean in practice. It is about lifting people up, not locking them out. It's about designing economies that reflect our best values, not just our biggest profits. To close, a sustainable economy is not just about clean energy and balanced budgets. It is about dignity, inclusion, and justice. If we want a world where the environment thrives and economies endure, we must first ensure that people can live with basic security, opportunity, and hope. Reducing poverty through sustainable growth is not optional. It is the foundation of everything else. Let us build economies that leave no one behind, and in doing so, build a world that can truly move forward. Slide 36, Global Trade and Supply Chains. Title: Sustainability in a Globalized World. Today, the products we buy often travel thousands of kilometers before reaching our homes. Our smartphones may be designed in California, assembled in China, using cobalt mined in the Congo, and shipped across the oceans. A simple chocolate bar could involve cocoa from West Africa, sugar from Brazil, and packaging made in Europe. A cotton t-shirt might pass through 4 or 5 countries before it lands on a store shelf. This is the reality of the modern global economy. Global trade and supply chains have connected the world like never before. But this level of interconnection also comes with a hidden price. And too often, that price is paid in the form of environmental degradation, human exploitation, and deep inequality. Let's start by looking at global supply chains. These vast, complex networks allow companies to source raw materials, manufacture products, and distribute goods efficiently and cheaply. On the surface, it looks like a success story of globalization: faster production, lower costs, and wider access to goods. But look deeper, and we begin to see the hidden environmental and social costs buried inside these chains. For example, deforestation in Southeast Asia to make way for palm oil plantations, which ends up in everyday products like shampoo, cookies, and detergent. Child labor in cobalt and lithium mines, minerals that are critical for the batteries in our phones, laptops, and electric cars. Carbon emissions from global shipping routes, which now contribute nearly 3% of all greenhouse gas emissions annually. Toxic waste from fast fashion manufacturing dumped into rivers in developing countries. Exploitation of low-wage workers in unsafe factories to meet the demands of just-in-time delivery schedules. What these examples show us is that sustainability doesn't stop at the border. A truly sustainable product isn't just one that's recyclable or labeled eco-friendly. It's one that comes from a responsible and transparent supply chain. And this is exactly where the world is now shifting. There is a growing push for transparency from governments, civil society, and consumers alike. People are no longer satisfied with ignorance. They want to know, where did this product come from? Who made it? What conditions did they work in? What impact did it have on the environment? Was it produced with dignity, fairness, and accountability? In response to this demand, governments are acting. New laws are being passed that require companies to disclose supply chain risks, particularly around forced labor, environmental harm, and human rights abuses. For example, the EU's upcoming Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive will require companies to identify and address human rights and environmental impacts in their supply chains. Germany's Supply Chain Act holds large companies legally responsible for violations committed by their global suppliers. Similar laws exist or are emerging in the UK, France, Canada, and beyond. The message is clear: ignorance is no longer an excuse. If a company profits from a supply chain, it also bears responsibility for what happens along that chain. The private sector is also evolving. More companies are beginning to map their supply chains more thoroughly, use technology like blockchain to track raw materials, conduct third-party audits, set sustainability and labor standards for their suppliers, report publicly on environmental and social performance. These efforts aren't just about risk management. They're about brand trust. Consumers, especially younger generations, are more likely to support businesses that are ethical, transparent, and sustainable. Investors are also rewarding companies that show they understand their ESG, environmental, social, and governance responsibilities. Transparency isn't just good ethics. It's good business. But what does this mean for us? It means that global sustainability depends on local awareness. As consumers, we may be far from the factories or farms where our goods are produced, but we are not disconnected. Every purchase we make is a vote for the kind of labor practices we accept, for the environmental impacts we tolerate, and for the systems we support. This is why informed consumption matters. It's why certifications like Fair Trade, Rainforest Alliance, and B Corp exist. It's why we must ask more of brands and reward those that do the right thing. The pressure for change doesn't just come from regulators. It comes from us. To conclude, globalization has interconnected economies, but supply chains often hide environmental and social costs. Deforestation for palm oil, child labor in mining, pollution from shipping. Increasingly, governments and consumers demand transparency. Companies must disclose their supply chain impacts to ensure fair and sustainable trade. We are part of a global system, one that we help build and one that we can help reform. If sustainability is to be real, it must reach every link of the supply chain, from the raw material to the finished product, from the factory floor to the store shelf. And that means not just asking what we consume, but asking how it was made and who paid the price. In a globalized world, responsibility must be as interconnected as the economy itself. Let us build a system where global trade lifts people up, not tears environments down. Let us demand supply chains that are not only efficient, but also ethical, transparent, and sustainable. That is the future we should be investing in, and it's already underway. Slide 37. Economic Sustainability Summary. Title: Key Takeaways. As we conclude this section on economic sustainability, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've explored and why it matters now more than ever. We've seen how economies are not just financial systems, they are human systems. They're deeply tied to our environment, to social equity, to trust, and to the way we envision our collective future. And we've come to understand that if we want prosperity that lasts, we must rethink how we define it. Not just profit for the few, not just growth for growth's sake, but value that is long-term, fair, and shared. This is the core of economic sustainability. Let's begin with the first key idea. Long-term prosperity requires balance. Traditional economic thinking often prioritizes short-term returns, quarterly profits, and immediate gains. But that approach, while effective in the short run, comes with long-term risks. When we extract without replenishing, exploit without protecting, and grow without regard for people or the planet, we are not building wealth. We are borrowing from the future, and eventually, the debt comes due. Economic sustainability is about restoring that balance between production and protection, between efficiency and equity, between now and tomorrow. It reminds us that a healthy economy cannot exist on a dying planet, and a thriving market cannot function in a fractured society. Prosperity that endures is prosperity that respects limits, shares benefits, and plans for the generations yet to come. Second, we looked at the rise of green and circular economies. A green economy focuses on low-carbon, resource-efficient, and socially inclusive growth. It replaces pollution and overconsumption with clean energy, renewable resources, and sustainable infrastructure. Meanwhile, a circular economy redesigns our systems to reduce waste, recycle materials, and keep value circulating. It moves us away from the outdated take, make, dispose model toward a smarter, regenerative approach. Together, these models are reshaping the future of business and policy. They are already creating new markets and industries, reducing environmental harm, unlocking innovation in design, technology, and logistics. They show us that environmental responsibility is not a constraint. It's a driver of modern economic resilience. The countries and companies that invest in circularity and green transformation today will be the leaders of tomorrow's economy. The third takeaway is the role of ethical trade and responsible investment. Global supply chains and financial systems influence everything, from labor conditions in factories to emissions from shipping to the sustainability of our retirement funds. As we discussed earlier, supply chains often hide environmental and social costs. But that is changing. Consumers, regulators, and investors are demanding transparency and accountability. They are pushing for ethical sourcing, fair wages, and safe working conditions, divestment from harmful industries, investment in renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, and social enterprises. This shift is not just ethical, it's strategic. Ethical companies are more resilient. Transparent supply chains build brand trust. Sustainable investments create stable, long-term returns. The bottom line is this: a sustainable economy is one where business success no longer comes at the cost of people or the planet. And finally, we arrive at the most important pillar: inclusive growth for all. Because an economy that leaves people behind is not sustainable. An economy that thrives while millions live in poverty is not just. And an economy that rewards the powerful while ignoring the vulnerable is not resilient. Sustainability demands that we expand access to opportunity, support small entrepreneurs, close income and gender gaps, empower marginalized communities, build economies that reflect the dignity of all people. Whether through microfinance, social protection, fair taxation, or public investment in education and healthcare, inclusive growth must be the foundation of sustainable development. It's not about charity. It's about justice. And it's about building a society that can endure economic shocks, embrace innovation, and move forward together. So to sum up, economic sustainability ensures prosperity that lasts. It embraces green and circular economies, ethical business practices, and responsible investment. It requires inclusive growth that reduces poverty and inequality. And it teaches us that a truly sustainable economy is one where prosperity is shared without exhausting the planet's resources. The decisions we make today about what we invest in, what we prioritize, and who we include will determine the future we leave behind. We have the tools, we have the knowledge, and we have the responsibility. Let us move forward with the understanding that sustainability is not a barrier to growth. It is the path to a better kind of growth, one that is smart, one that is fair, and most importantly, one that can last. Thank you all for your attentive participation so far. I trust that the ideas we've shared today have sparked some reflections, questions, or even challenges, which is exactly what we hoped for. At this point, we'd like to open the floor for questions, comments, or contributions from you, our valued attendees. Whether your thoughts are rooted in curiosity, concern, or constructive critique, we welcome them all. This is your opportunity to deepen the conversation, seek clarification, or connect the themes we've explored to your own experience or field of work. Please feel free to use the chat box to type your questions or raise your hand if you'd like to speak directly. Our team is here to ensure that your voice is heard. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to hand over this next segment to two exceptional leaders who continue to shape the direction of sustainability education and collaborative action. First, to the visionary founder and CEO of Saraduro Educational Multilinks, Professor Adelik Daniel Drogi, whose leadership and commitment have brought us all together on this platform today. And alongside him, to our esteemed collaborator, Dr. Julius of Seal, whose insights and expertise continue to enrich every part of this engagement. Professor Drogi, Dr. Julius, the floor is yours.